Welcome back. Episode 6 of the Four Insight Podcast. I'm Mike Obi.
I'm Nick Washington.
Thank y'all for tuning in. Nick, how you doing, bro?
I'm back, man. I had to take a week, but I'm back. So.
Couple weeks, but you're here. Let's get right into it. Uh, we're facing a crazy time in our country right now. Not only are we dealing with coronavirus, but also the past few weeks have been really testy and tough time, especially for African Americans. Dealing with the murders of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and most recently George Floyd. Um, just let's go ahead and get right into the content. What has been your take on what has happened in the past couple of weeks and what you've seen?
I get the protesting. I'm all for the protesting. I personally haven't been out and protested anything like that. But I think that hopefully that there's some change going to come from this. And that I think that a lot more people are starting to really see the problem. Not Black people. Obviously, Black people know the problem, but other races, white people, Asian people, Indian people that kind of know it's there, but they don't really pay too much attention to it. I think it's starting to become more on their radar now, and they're seeing that, it isn't right that almost every other race can kind of, there's other races that experience racism, but not as bad or not on the level that African American people do. So I think that's starting to be noticed. I don't really agree with the whole looting and stuff, destroying property and shit like that, because that doesn't fix anything. But the protesting, nonviolent protesting is great. But the other stuff, the other people that's out there doing the other things, I don't agree with. So, but that's just me.
No, I feel you. For me, I think this particular one, the situation already was tense. People are already dealing with enough stress, being at home. A lot of people are sitting, they have no job, they have no income, their housing, they're losing their houses, they're losing money, losing their jobs, and then they're dealing with this virus that already causes a great level of anxiety. And then as you're sitting at home, you're hearing one guy, Ahmaud Arbery, get, killed for just jogging in his neighborhood. And that's still relatively fresh on a lot of people's minds. And then all of a sudden you get to George Floyd. And I just think the level of sort of disdain in the cops' eyes. So a lot of people are really bothered. Those who watched the video and those who saw it and those who happened to witness the entire thing, because the video itself is graphic. And it was just that level of outrage and that level of um, that happening at that time, I think really just tipped the scales for a lot of people, especially those that are in the middle who might have thought, police brutality really isn't that big of a deal. Or maybe it's not that big of an issue. You know, now they're saying, oh no, this is crazy, and like this is, something must be done, right?
Yeah.
And just the outpouring. We'll get into it more, but I think the outpour is really just a matter of people understanding that this isn't a black versus white issue. It never was. It's about people being abused by a system where they feel like they're helpless, and they feel like no matter if they try to do the right thing, they're still in danger, and that there's nothing that they can do about it. And I think that's really what's afflicting the change right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like, I and I and that's why I was starting to see after the whole Aubrey situation. It was kind of starting to get like washed away by COVID and all this other stuff. People were starting to forget um, about that, and so that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I hopefully that this time that this protesting and this incident, even though it was a sad incident and somebody had to lose their life over it, that it doesn't just become forgotten about. It just doesn't get brushed under the rug. So,
Yeah, I think also let's get into it a little deeper. The idea of police brutality and how it's indicative of a greater problem. You know, uh, it's been a thing that's always been around. I mean, but I think really truly what people are frustrated with is the idea of a system, systematic racism, systematic oppression, and I think people feeling like their voices aren't being heard from the standpoint people have gone out, they've protested peacefully, they've done it that way, and nothing's being done, either not fast enough or not at all. And so then I think the rioting happened, whether you agree with it or not. I think it was a result of people feeling like their voices aren't being heard and their cries aren't being heard. And that's the one thing I always kind of feared was when things got violent or when things get out of hand to the point where people lose um, all all credibility and all respect for authority, respect in the aspect of, I mean, if people decide, well, if the police aren't going to protect us, who will? We have to protect ourselves and we have to take it into our own hands. You know, when you get to that point of sort of anarchy, if you will, um, that to me is really whenever people understand how big the problem can get.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do think that some of the rioting and stuff is because people are feeling like they aren't being heard, and it's understandable. Because it's frustrating when you aren't being heard. Especially when it's about a serious topic and it's kind of just being ignored. But then at the same time, it's like violence doesn't fix violence. You know what I'm saying? So the police, have done what they've done. There's been incidents, and things have been ignored, and things have been, um, you know, they've been what they've been. But us being violent back is only just gonna make them up that violence. You know what I'm saying? Up the violence, up the prejudice, up the harassment, I guess you can say. So it's really in the long run, it's not going to do something positive. It might, in the moment, make you feel like, oh, okay, you know, I feel better, because I was able to go and destroy some property, and it kind of helped me get out my frustrations about not being heard.
Mhm.
Uh, but then at the same time, that feel of like accomplishment, or that feeling of that you're being heard was only going to last for so long, because then it's really just going to make the situation worse, in my opinion. In the long run, you have to look. I mean, you look at the short stuff, but you have to look at the longevity of rioting. Like how far can you get with rioting? How what change can you really make with rioting?
Yeah. Well, I
So
mean, I think the logic is that if we do it peacefully, you're just a bunch of people making noise and just you're just protesting like there's no merit in it really, other than the fact that you're coming out and you're just simply bringing light to the issue. But what are you going to do about it? So then a lot of people's logic goes from that to we have to affect people's pocketbooks. Now, again, that's a short-term fix, is what you're acknowledging, which I agree with, because one thing about, at least I can speak for myself, because I've grown up around various backgrounds and been around various types of people. I know for one thing I've been told is, the way people who don't agree with, protesting or who feel like there's no merit to this cause is that those people who riot, those people who protest, when you get violent and when you loot, they just look at it as, you see, this is why police do what they do, or this is why the cops react to what the way that they react, whether it's right or wrong. That's the logic that is then introduced. So people have to see the big picture and things. And again, protesting is good, but it should be a step in fixing the problem. It shouldn't be the only thing, in my opinion.
yeah, it can't be the only thing. Yeah, there's no longevity in that being the only thing. Yeah, so I agree.
Mhm. On to the next thing, though. A lot of times people feel like, oh, where is this really coming from? Is racism really a thing? Is racism really a problem? The way people frame it to be. For you, have you ever experienced racism either in life or with the cops that you would want to share for people?
Um, Yeah, maybe like a couple of times. Back when I used to live in Austin, um, there was a guy on the football team, right? And this big white dude, his name was Joe. I
Hmm.
can't really say his last name, but his name was Joe.
Yeah.
This big country white boy and everything. And his girlfriend at the time used to hang out with me and another one of my black friends. And, I remember one day she came and told us, she was like, yeah, Joe was mad at me because I was hanging out with you guys and he told me not to hang out with y'all, or blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And he's like, because he doesn't like black people and all this other stuff. And it was like, okay. And so I was like, I wanted to sit down and talk with him about it. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to know why. If you can honestly tell me a valid reason why you don't like me,
Hmm.
then that's cool. But if you just saying you don't like me just because you don't like me, you don't really know me. We on the same team, but we don't really, we're not in the same circle. You know what I'm saying? So we ended up being able to sit down. It was like me, his girlfriend, and my other friend, and we was talking, and he was just like, I don't know. It's just like how I was raised is that, my dad didn't like black people. And so I just didn't like black people. And, I see some black people and, I just don't like the way that they act and the way that they do things. And I
Hmm.
was like, I completely understand that. There's some black people I don't like. You can call me racist or whatever you want to call me. I don't like some black people, just like I don't like some white people, just like I don't like some other, Asian people, whatever. But there's people in that group that I also do like. I do like white people. I do like black people. I do like Asian people. But there are some that I don't like. But that doesn't stop me from blocking out that whole race as a whole.
Hmm.
Um, and he was just like, yeah, after sitting here talking with you guys, I understand that like not all black people are the same, and uh, I guess it's just something that I hadn't known because I just was always told growing up that, oh, I don't like black people and black people, this and that. And I was like, yeah, no, I get that, because that's just the environment. That's how you were raised. You didn't know any better, so I can't really blame you for that. And he was like, yeah, yeah. And then after that, me and him ended up being pretty cool. I even got to meet his dad, and his dad, after talking to his dad ended up, liking us and everything.
Hmm.
So I think that at the end of the day, racism is a generational thing, um, and it's some of it's conscious and some of it's unconscious
Yeah.
because I feel like is black is like connected to negative. It's connected to bad.
Hmm.
That's just kind of what you're grown. You're growing up taught is like, oh, black is dark, black is negative, black is um, you know stuff like that, and so it's that kind of feeds into the what is it, subconscious
Hmm.
mind. So I feel like you just have to educate people
Hmm.
that not every black person is the same. Like not every white person is the same. Not every white person is a hillbilly, and not every hillbilly is a you know stuff like that. You just have to educate people, um, and that's just and that you have to be okay with them not agreeing. When I went and had the conversation with him, I wasn't going in to try to change his mind or anything like that. I was going to really just hear his side of the story and give my side of the story. If at the end of the conversation he says, "Well, I still don't like black people," that was cool. I appreciate you sitting down and talking, have a conversation with me,
Hmm.
and you know, it is what it is. But you can't you can't think that everybody's just gonna jump along and everybody's gonna want to love black people, or every black person is gonna start loving white people. It's not gonna be that way. So
No, I feel you. And my example is similar to yours, but mine delves a little deeper. So, same thing. It was a guy I grew up with. So, full disclosure, where I grew up, it was another part of Houston, but it was a little bit less financially well off. And so, I grew up with this group of guys who, call themselves rednecks. Wore Confederate flag belts to school. Wore the camo, wore the boots, all those things that you would think stereotypically that's what they did, right? And that's what they even refer to themselves as. And so one day I'm in class and I played football with a couple of them, and one of them comes up to me and is like, "What's up, N word?" Right? And rather than having an approach that is like, "Well, I could fight this guy, I could hit him because I hear that word,"
Yeah.
I decided to take the approach kind of like what you did. I was like, "What do you gain from saying that word? Like, what is it about? Is it something that I did to you as a black person? Is it something I did, or do you just say that and you don't really know what you're talking about, right?" And he kind of was shook at the fact that I didn't react aggressively, and so then he actually sits down and he tells me, he's like, "Look, you know, where I grew up, my dad and the rest of the men in our neighborhood used to teach us how to, that it's important for us as white guys to preserve our race, right?" This is what he's telling me.
Yeah.
Um, I saw you talking to one of your white friends who was a girl, and so naturally that drives me insane because I picture a black person dating a white person, and that doesn't sit well with me. I've been taught that that's not how it's supposed to be. That black should be with black and white should be with white, right? And so
Yeah.
that was the first time I ever heard anything like that. But at the same time, it gave me the insight that, like, okay, this is a generational and a fundamental principle that's taught to certain people,
Mm.
So the reason why I bring that example up is that you don't know what people have been taught. So it's not always fair to judge people because you never know what they were taught. And so for me, right, as I got older and I was dealing with people being prejudiced, people saying things or saying the N word or whatever. Um, Part of me is like, you want to be aggressive, you want to tell them off, but then another part of me is like, um, man, I just feel sorry for you because you have a flawed view of life that is really going to only affect you in the end. And I think that's part of what causes the frustration amongst African American people is the idea that for so long they're being told, "Oh, change is going to happen. Be patient. Turn the cheek. Turn the other way. Don't buy into it." It's like at some point we keep turning the cheek and turning the cheek, and it keeps happening. At what point should we stand up and say something? And I think that's what's happening now is that people have gotten tired of just dealing with it, and now they want to do something about it. Now what doing something about it is looking like, it depends on the person. For the most part, it's been peacefully protesting, but for others, peaceful just isn't the way to go, and that's where you see the riots starting to erupt, and that's where you see the people looting. um, you know, I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong, whether I agree or disagree. All I'm saying is these are reactions to things that have happened in people's life. Not everybody has the ability to say, well, logically, this isn't right. Some people, their passion gets the better of them. And as a result, when they see enough being enough, they react the way that they do.
Yeah. Yeah. It is what it is, you know.
Hmm. But I mean, transitioning though, it hasn't all been bad. One thing that I found to be beautiful in all of this darkness and in all of this mayhem is the fact that people are starting to come together. I mean, in all the protests that I witnessed and that I was even remotely around, in our neighborhood, they've done one protest, and even just seeing that, you know, it's become a unifying thing, at least from my perspective. People of all colors, creeds, age groups, demographics, dynamics, they're all coming together because it's a fight for what they believe is right, versus what they believe is wrong. It's not a black versus white issue anymore. Not that I ever thought that it was, in my opinion.
Right.
Um, it's becoming we have to do what is right as human beings, and we have to fight for our fellow brother, sister, for our fellow human. And it's a fight against oppression. And when we look at this, the one thing I see is that this is just another step in evolution. You know, Black people came here as slaves, but in 1600s, 1700s, took 100 years for slavery to be abolished. Took almost another 100 years for integration be done, and people had to die, people had to lose their lives, people had to lose their livelihoods, and now we're just at the next step, which is that now we're trying to fight for equality, not pro-black, because that issue gets hijacked a lot of the time. You know, it's important to restate what the message is and what people are fighting for. This is just simply black people wanting to say our lives matter and that we matter as people. Not that we matter more, not that another race matters less. Just we want to be acknowledged as human beings who have the same rights that any other American have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you kind of hit it on the spot. Like we just want to be equal. We want to be treated equally. We want to have um, equal opportunities that other races have. Um, that's all it is. It's not trying to say, oh, because we're black, we deserve to be better off. We're better than other people, or we need to be treated better than other people. We just want to be treated equally. That's all it comes down to at the end of the day. So,
Yeah. But I mean, going forward now, eventually the protests may stop. We don't know when, but eventually they will. They'll begin to cease, but the movement has to continue. What are some things that you think could be done to help with the issue of police brutality and violence and everything that we're witnessing right now?
um, it's just gonna take people really in the legal system to kind of people in the legal system and people with, I guess you could say, power
Mm-hmm.
to kind of make that change because there's only so much and so far that you can go just as a, I guess we're gonna say, normal human being or a normal person. Um, but at some point, you need somebody that's in a position of power to kind of help push the agenda and to make real change. So yeah, hopefully that we get some lawmakers and some politicians or whatever to help kind of further that agenda and make progress that way. Because there's, like I said, there's only so much that is going to be able to be done
Right,
for normal people. You know.
for sure. And I mean, I think just people continuing to speak out and us informing each other, just as citizens. First off, this is a real problem, and this is how this is a real problem. I'm on Instagram, and one thing that has been good for me to learn is whenever people I follow, um, you know, put up things about, how there's a racial disparity amongst, whether it be financial opportunity, educational opportunity, or just, demographics, living demographics, where you live and how where you live affects your livelihood. You know what I'm saying? You know these things generally, but to see it put in fact and to see the visuals, it really just keeps on reinforcing the issue, and you're able to then spread that message to the people who follow you, and you can bring light to that subject and you know into that discussion. That listen, we're not trying to create enemies. We're just simply trying to bring awareness. You know, um, the great thing for me is that I luckily haven't had to deal too much of people antagonizing me, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so with that, it makes it easier for me to be able to educate people, and even the people who I interact with on a daily basis, whether it be at the job or just in regular life. When they ask me, I don't hesitate to try to inform them as best I can. When they ask me questions about why is this such a big deal, or why is it bothering people so much, I sit down with them. We have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because this isn't an easy thing to talk about. you
Yeah,
know
it definitely not. Yeah, it's not going to be an easy thing to talk about, and we just when we get somebody who asks a question,
Mhm.
um, uh, there are going to be some people that's going to ask in a not a negative way, but they don't believe in it, and so they're just trying to antagonize you.
Mhm.
Um, there are people who genuinely just want to understand. And so we just have, when somebody asks, we'll have to just take that time and calmly approach the situation and explain it to them. You know,
Yeah.
this is the history, this is what it is, and this is why we're upset. And not try and like make it to where we're blaming them specifically, but we're just trying to educate them and let them kind of make their own decision about it, but just educate them on where we're coming from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
And also, it takes understanding where they're coming from as well. I mean, for some people, they've never had to, see things and have empathy for the other side, right? So it's really kind of getting them to understand, how would you feel if whether you being a mother or father of children, imagine the cops coming and calling you, or somebody calling you saying, "Oh, sorry, your son or your daughter was, murdered by the police," and then they come home, they bring in you the video, and you're seeing your son's neck being knelt on by a police officer. This is a person who the public and the society is thought of, they're supposed to protect and serve, and they're conducting themselves in a manner that is very um, aggressive and, not beholden to what the mores that they were supposed to uphold, um, and then as far as athletes, because I think they're the people who have the greater voice, um, they have to continue to speak out. And I think that it's good, the athletes that have come out and done it, because whether they like it or not, whether we like it or not, people look up to them, you know. And so them giving their voice to the platform, and them, sort of lending a hand, I think will only help spread the message to a greater amount of people, you know.
yeah,
So all the enemies of progress is all those who just don't want to see prosperity happen, or for those who don't want to see peace be attained. you know we just have to understand that those people do exist, and you just have to keep on rolling with it, and understanding that the fight that you're pushing for is greater than ourselves. It's to help people, live life fairly and live life the right way.
yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. But I also feel like there has to be um, more responsibility,
Mm.
and I mean, maybe not responsibility, but police have to be held um, more accountability is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
More accountability for your actions, and even as the whole police system, the whole as a whole. I saw that. I don't know if this is true, but I know it's some kind of range, but like how cops only go through like a whatever it is, like an 8-week course on the law
Mm.
in training or whatever, but you have to go to law school for 3 years to become a lawyer.
Mm.
So you kind of see where there's a despair there. So you're putting these people out on the street that took an 8-week class, and they're gonna go and tell you the law. You
Right.
know. So I feel like there has to be a change there. Like if you're going to have these people on the street and they're gonna be trying to enforce the law, they need to be able to know the law in full. You can't take an 8-week class and then think that you're some kind of lawyer or that you know the law. It's just not going to happen, because if you could know the law in 8 weeks, then why is law school 3 years?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
And
that
them holding each other accountable as well. One guy on TNT, Kenny Smith, he proposed a plan that I thought was really good, which is that, if you're a police officer and you see one of your colleagues abusing the badge or abusing privileges or whatever, everybody who's around is held responsible. So now, if you see wrong being done and you don't do anything about it, you're held just as liable, right? I think that would be a good way of, the police sort of policing themselves, because if you just let it happen, you're just as culpable. It's the same thing that you're taught in school or anything else. Yeah, you might not have done anything, but you're still an accessory, or you're still punished, even though you might not have done the actual act you allowed it to happen. It's the same thing. So I
Yeah.
think that would be one thing that could be enacted that I think would at least help with the issue. You know, again, it's not a simple fix. It's not a simple process, but um, as long as we keep working to help heal the divide and help fix things. I mean, I think that's what we have to strive for.
Yeah. Just everybody being held accountable. Like you said, I mean, for the cops, yeah, I get that policing and all that is a brotherhood. So if it's really a brotherhood, if you see your brother doing something wrong, are
Mm-hmm.
you going to excuse it or are you going to call him out on his shit? You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah,
it's
and being a police officer, I mean, let's be real. That's not an easy job. You
not,
know, what
definitely.
they're doing is very difficult. You
Yeah.
know, and we're not minimizing that at all. Again, the thing is just for the good cops out there, we love and appreciate them, and we love what they do. We respect what they do.
Yeah.
I interact with them all the time in my jobs, and I always make it a point to let them know, hey, we appreciate what you do. We appreciate you protecting us. But for the colleagues of theirs that don't uphold those same standards, it's important that they get rid of those people or they hold them accountable because one bad seed can ruin the whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the issue that we're dealing with right now. Is we're trying to get the bad seeds either out of there or we're trying to hold them accountable for their actions, just like the common man would be held accountable for our actions,
Accountable. Yeah.
you know. But that's a wrap for us. My guy Nick, great episode, man. Good job. And For Insight Podcast, episode 6. Catch us on YouTube, Spotify, and all platforms streaming podcasts. Thank you.